The U.S. Supreme Court is currently weighing a significant case about homelessness. Last week, the justices heard arguments about whether cities can fine, ticket, or jail people for sleeping outside when there are not enough beds in shelter. The case comes at a time when the U.S. is seeing a record number of people without a permanent place to live. More than 650,000 people are estimated to be homeless, according to the annual Homelessness Assessment Report. And 40% of those people are so-called unsheltered, meaning they are sleeping outside of the streets and in parks, train stations, and other public places. Spectrum News reporter Cody Taylor has the story of one man's struggle in Wisconsin.
This is Mike. He's currently living in shelters and sometimes on the streets.
Not only do I have addiction issues, I got mental issues and stuff like that. I'm actually supposed to be on meds for bipolar, ADD, ADHD.
Mike says he hasn't been able to get the medications he needs to treat his disorders. He says that's one of the main reasons he started using drugs in the first place.
8 years sober off the alcohol, but when I relapsed on crack, I've been sober about 4 months.
During the time of this interview, Mike was sleeping in shelters. Often he finds himself living in doorways and tents in areas just like this.
This place has got, usually has a few more tents. People arguing and fighting with themselves, with each other, talking to themselves.
There are shelter services throughout Madison. Right down the road from where Mike was sleeping is the men's drop-in shelter. Ferris is the manager. He says over the past few months, the need has increased drastically.
We accept basically anyone. We're a wet shelter, meaning we allow guests who are under the influence of any possible substance imaginable.
Ferris says his shelter does have rules. He says many struggling with homelessness had trouble following those rules.
A lot of our guests have dealt and still deal with a lot of trauma. So having, rules and structure is a bit difficult for them to abide by.
He says almost all the people that come into the shelter deal with mental illnesses, addiction, or both.
It's basically the thing that causes people to lose their housing, forget to pay rent, get evicted, whatever it might be.
Mike says those are the things that led to him living on the streets. And he says when you're trying to stay sober, get your life on track, living in homeless shelters can get in the way of that.
And I was hanging out with some people, and they had passed me the pipe a couple times. At first I turned it down, and on the third time it's like I was up in my head. And on the third time when they passed the pipe, I fucking took a hit, thinking one hit wouldn't kill me, and I was back to it.
Mike says he hasn't used crack for over 4 months now, but he says if he doesn't get the medication and mental health resources he needs, he has no idea what will happen to him in the future. Reporting in Madison, Cody Taylor, Spectrum News.
This week, a bipartisan group of 50 mayors convened in Washington, D.C. to call on lawmakers and the White House to address homelessness. The delegation included a number of mayors from cities all across California, where there are more than 180,000 people reportedly experiencing homelessness, the most of any state. Joining me now to talk more about the homelessness crisis is Amrit Singh. He's the anchor for Spectrum News 1 in Southern California. Good to see you, my friend. I wanted to ask you about the state of homelessness, in particular in Southern California, especially around Los Angeles. I know that there are soaring housing costs as well as an influx of fentanyl, and I imagine that must exacerbate the problem there.
All those things are absolutely true, Errol. It is great to be with you, but you asked about the state of homelessness. It's a state of emergency, and that's an official declaration from Mayor Karen Bass, one that she made soon after taking office in December of 2022. And then over the course of 2023, the issue got worse, despite Mayor Bass rolling out this signature issue called Inside Safe, this program that we can talk about. But according to the latest homeless count from the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, that issue got 9 to 10% worse in the city of LA and the county of LA. There are now 46,000 people living on the streets of LA, and it's just really one of the biggest issues of our time here.
Wow. Now, part of the agenda for the group of mayors is to expand eligibility for housing vouchers available to veterans. In fact, your mayor, Karen Bass, who is chairing the Conference of Mayors Task Force on Homelessness, had this to say in Washington this week. Let's take a listen.
The men and women who have defended us should never, ever, ever sleep one night outside. And the idea that in many cities around our country, we actually have vacant units and unused vouchers for veterans because of technicality of including their income.
There in Los Angeles, the mayor's Inside Safe program that you referenced has gotten rid of a lot of encampments, including some that are being used by veterans, by providing residents with temporary motel rooms in the hopes of eventually getting them services. The critics, though, are saying that they end up stuck in those motels for months on end with nowhere to go because in the end, there's really no affordable housing available. Is that the nub of the problem there?
Well, I can speak to some of the criticism of the issue, Errol, and you're right. What you described is correct. There's nowhere to go, in part because of inventory issues. And one of the issues here in LA and in California is this 1970 legislation called the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, which really creates a lot of red tape around creating some of that housing. And when it comes to inside safes, if there's no inventory, according to the count from the LA Times of last year, $65 million spent on this program for getting 255 people into permanent housing. A lot of people say this is aesthetics because Mayor Bass does get some of these encampments off of the streets and really problem areas, really high visibility areas. But it's aesthetics over numbers because at the end you see $65 million spent, 255 people in permanent housing. People say, how can that be sustainable? There's this federal judge here, David O. Carter, who says, I'm calling for an audit into this program at the behest of this alliance of businesses in LA who filed this lawsuit. Also an audit coming from LA City Controller Kenneth Mejia on this issue as well. And I just got to tell you, Errol, Mayor Bass just had her budget rollout, and she called for a $65 million cut to that signature program, still funded to the tune of $185 million. But a lot of people say, hey, this might be a reflection of this grim reality of the program's difficulties. But you know, she's not giving up. She's still got ideas. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, when it comes to ideas, I was struck by another thing that I saw that Mayor Bass has unveiled, which is to try and ask wealthy residents of Los Angeles to just donate money to buy apartments for the unhoused population. Is that a real approach? I mean, are the wealthy actually donating? What has the response been to that?
There's hope and skepticism around this, Errol. And I mean, just the receipts that we have so far, limited as they are, it's a relatively new program. It's called LA for LA. About $10 million is the most recent count. Hollywood mogul Jeffrey Katzenberg wrote a big check for $300,000. But a lot of this just reflects the fact that taxpayers are fatigued at billions of dollars spent across California and even here in LA for not a lot of results. So Mayor Bass is saying, instead of putting this back onto the ballot with a bond measure, let's ask some of these wealthy people to donate. Let's see, maybe they will, maybe they won't, but it's just some sort of a proposition or a solution. And, like I said, there's some money coming in, but people are saying, especially wealthy people are saying, don't ask us. But again, we'll have to see how much it really comes up with.
Okay. I know you're going to stay on top of that. Thanks so much. Very informative discussion. Great to talk with you, my friend. Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage. And click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.